Welcome to Business Coaching Secrets with Karl Bryan. If you want to attract new high-end coaching clients, fill live events, and build a wildly profitable coaching practice where business owners pay, stay, and refer, you've come to the right place. In this podcast, Karl provides his keys to the kingdom for finding and signing high-paying clients and building the coaching business of your dreams. Here we go.
Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Business Coaching Secrets, where we give you the strategies, mindsets, and frameworks to building your own and dare I say it, seven-figure coaching business. I am, of course, your host, the Rode Dog, with none other than the man, the myth, the man literally turning into a dolphin before our very eyes, Karl Bryan. Shoots.
Shoots. How are you, buddy? What's going on? I was out surfing today. Good
Go.
stuff. Good way to start the day, bud. Good way. No dolphins, unfortunately, but that's all good.
Did you get any tips from the dolphins for your water fast, or what's happening there?
I made it. I bailed out after 5 days, by the way. So I got to tell you, man, I don't if anybody out there is thinking about doing a fast, and there's a lot of science behind the fact that it is incredibly healthy for you. But I'll just tell you, like the mental clarity on truthfully, what I normally do, so I've done quite a few of them, but I normally I get a little bit hungry and I suck on a lemon. Well, I did a little bit of homework and then I found out, and again, you don't know what's accurate and what's not accurate or whatever, but apparently sucking on a lemon can stop your fast, which is a little disturbing, just quietly. But anyway, so water only, baby. And I got to tell you, day one and day two was a little harder than it has been in the past. That's for sure. But man, the mental clarity is just off the chain. Off the chain,
folks. You hear that? The chain.
Folks,
Folks, what do you do when you have that? Do you sit there and do you have your TTT moments, or what do you got going on there, Shoots?
My what moments?
Your TTT, was it? Is that what you called it?
Oh, TT. Oh, there we go. Time to think. Yeah, boom. Oh, look, a little bit of that. I didn't really delve into my TTT on any more. To be honest with you, I just kind of enjoy, the last few podcasts we talk about, peace, happiness not being the goal, peace being the goal. I love Buddhist monk. I just enjoy, just some calm and I just tell you, the mental clarity, my mind goes pretty fast, can be a beautiful thing and a horrific thing. Like they say, your greatest weakness is your greatest strength turned up too loud. My mind going a little bit too quick can be a little bit of one of those things. I'd love to slow it down once in a while. So it just slows down. And I just enjoyed just chilling out. And now I'm back and I'm good.
Can I ask you that? Like that's you have said that many times before. And before we dive into the pod here, can you say your greatest weakness is your biggest weakness is your greatest strength turned up too loud. Can you just take a minute and just talk about that for a second of what that actually means?
Great question. So somebody's a really talented salesperson, right? What could they do? They could convince people that probably shouldn't be buying their coaching to buy their coaching and then end up with a little bit of a headache, right? Like they could convince them to do something that maybe they shouldn't have convinced them to do. As coaches, we love to help and to serve and to improve and solve problems, right? Well, in my family life, do you think my wife wants her having me coach her and solve her problems constantly throughout the day? I'll give you a hint, right? Starts with no and ends with no, right? So again, if I'm really, really good at solving problems, but I start solving problems for people who, quite frankly, don't want their problem solved, it can just be a little bit of a challenge, right? A lot of people like your greatest addiction, they say, is not sugar, but problems. And some people want them. It comforts them, you know what I mean? In weird, crazy way. But yeah, see your greatest strength, or your greatest weakness, your greatest strength turned up too loud. It's a million examples, but I believe that to be a very powerful frame. So that's my answer.
There you go. Love it. Love it. Okay, so I'm going to dive right in. We got a question here. Interesting. So he says, "Hey, my client owns a very profitable construction company, and he did say they net about $1 million per year. And they found a laundromat that's for sale. Their goal is to get some more passive income. They put some numbers in here for you as well as sort of a frame and reference for you. The asking price is $400K. Revenue is about 282,000, and they've got cash flow of about 75 grand per year. And they're just wondering, hey, is this a good deal for them to buy? So,
Yeah.
Mr. Businessman, show us the way. Is it the good one?
Yeah. Let's start with probably no. So you guys have followed the podcast. You've heard me say this before, but the second business eats the first, right? So I don't know that this is the best idea. And I understand a laundromat, passive income kind of sounds a little better than what it might be. But look, I would go, first of all, what's their motivation? What's their why? Okay, so I guess let's just assume that's passive income. There could be some other whys involved there. I'd want to understand that. But like, okay, why, speaking of why is the owner selling is something I'd want to know. Like ideally, I want to be buying a business off somebody who is old, sick, dying, totally over it, not because they're trying to make a buck in a perfect world, right? Remember, you make money when you buy, not when you sell. And yes, you can make make money when you sell, but let me tell you, buying is significantly more important. And by the way, when buying, so what did they say? 400 grand. You want to see, so what most people will do is they'll start at 400 grand, but you really want to start at zero and go up, as opposed to start at 400 grand. And presumably you'd probably try to bring that down, right? So you're starting from zero coming up. And a laundromat, fairly hands off. But at the end of the day, it is going to take some time. It's going to take some money. It's going to take some focus. That's just, hopefully a given. I would want to verify those numbers. Who's presenting those? Is it a business broker that's presenting these numbers to them? Problem with that, again, if you followed us, you'll probably know what I'm about to say, but a business broker has no fiduciary responsibility. All right. So they don't, translation, they don't need to provide you accurate numbers, versus if you're buying it off of an investment banker or somebody in the M&A space, they do have fiduciary responsibility, right? They got to, so those numbers need to be verified by them before they put them in front of you. Business broker doesn't have that. So again, think of it as the wild, wild west. But so let's assume all that shakes out. I would want to see 3 years of financials and 3 years of tax returns. And yes, I know that their tax returns aren't going to reflect exactly what the business is doing, because no doubt you're writing off a bunch of personal stuff, and that's fine. But at the end of the day, I would want to see that, and I don't want to see 1 year. I want to see 3 years. One of the big things I'm looking for there, is it growing? Is it declining? Is it stagnating? Right? So what they say, 75 grand, do some math. Like that's a little bit over a 5x multiple. I'm going to say that's probably in and around the right area, maybe a little bit on the high side. Something like a 3x valuation would be a little bit more exciting. So coming in a little bit over 200 grand, maybe 225. Again, and it gets but a laundromat will get a higher multiple because it's a hands-off business, and very importantly, it's got low staff talents required, right? So you could hire anybody to manage it, an 18-year-old or an 80-year-old, versus like a dental office will get a lower multiple because it's a very complex business. Most people think instinctively that the dental practice would sell for a whole mitt full, and in actuality, they get a significantly less valuation. Again, because you got to hire dentists, and running a dental office has got complexities that a laundromat will never have. Probably pretty obvious. So the cash flow number, does it include owner salary? If it doesn't, I got to change it. Those numbers are going to change. That valuation is going to change, because why? You are going to need someone to manage the laundromat. if it's not going to be your client and they've already got a successful business. So that's probably not, they're thinking passive income. That's not what they're thinking, right? A business like that, like what are the high, like utilities are going to be a high expensive or a high expense. Again, I would want to know what those are. I also want to know how much rent is. That's again going to be a bit of a needle mover on the P&L in terms of their expenses. What does that look like? What does the lease look like? Is it up next year? Because I wouldn't want to be buying it and then know that I need to go to the landlord and renegotiate the lease anytime soon, because that could go sideways. So numbers would become significantly less sexy in that dynamic. I'd want to see at least 3 years and ideally 5 years left on the lease. What kind of equipment, what shape is it in? If you're going to need to buy new, like what goes into a laundromat, I just imagine it's washers and dryers. If you're going to have to replace those anytime soon, that's, capital expenditure, CapEx. That's going to be expensive. Translation, that's going to eat into those profits. So they might have worn all of those machines out. Now they need to be replaced. So what do? They put that thing up for sale to see if they can find a sucker, right? And by the way, with fear of scaring anybody, a laundromat is also much a cash business, right? Cash businesses are famous for money laundering schemes. And also just because it's cash, it can be more difficult to verify the revenues, right? So when it's cash, it's going to be higher to verify all that stuff. So then how would you combat that? I guess you got to spend a week there, and you want to see people coming in and out and, loosely doing the numbers in your head, right? Actually, what you do is you'd look at the utility bill and the water bill to verify usage, and then compare those to the revenue numbers, and it should give you a little bit of an idea. Just speak to some people that own laundromats and they would be able to tell you what that should, roughly look like. Is that going to be perfect? No, but it's going to give you a good idea, right? If they're way out to lunch, you want to, what I mean? Those numbers vary compared to what they should look like. You want to run. This is the kind of business where you can buy the dirt, buy the location. That's going to make it a lot more exciting. And by the way, does the person selling it own the land? And is there going to be an opportunity for your client to potentially own the land? Why do you want to do that? Because a really good dynamic is where you build up a business, own the land, sell the business, continue to own the land, and you've effectively got a renter for that, the next number of years, right? So again, who owns the lease? This is something I would want to know. How many machines, like actually, here's a really important one. Like how many machines do they have, right? And then logically what you want to have 10 machines, just arbitrarily 10 machines. No doubt there'll be more than that. But most people instinctively think if they've got 10 machines and then they're working at max capacity, that this is a good thing, right? Well, the problem with that is there's going to be nowhere to grow, right? So if there are 10 machines in a perfect world, what I want 3 of them to be used on average. And then what happens is it gives me the opportunity to like triple the business, because if I'm good at marketing, I get more people in there. I'm going to be able to take those revenues to the moon. If the machines are maxed, they got 10 machines, and all 10 are maxed out. There's going to be no opportunity for you to, take this business to significantly more profits and of course more profitability. I think also, I don't know if I'm so handy, right? Like who's fixing the machines now? Does the person that owns it currently a super handyman and then he's looking after all the machines, or does he have a company that comes in and then services them? Again, because these machines are going to need to be serviced on a regular basis. And then is your client super handy where if something does poop itself, they can kind of come, step in and fix these machines, which by the way can be pretty simple. No doubt a washing machine doesn't sound like it would be that complicated. It would be complicated for me, but it might not be complicated for a reasonably handy person. But I would want to know these things before I went and wrote a check that looked like hundreds of thousands of dollars, assuming that with the assumption that I'm going to turn my $400,000 into some long-term passive income. Another thing that I would want to know is how long has it been operational in total, right? So this thing called the Lindy effect. And effectively that says the longer that something has been around, the longer it is likely to stay around, right? So if this is a 3-year-old business, that's not nearly as, 1-year-old business, not very exciting. A 3-year-old business, not that exciting, but it's been there for 10 years. And it's got a history, with locals and with the location, and it's got regulars coming in and out, and it's known around the community. This again is going to be significantly more attractive and significantly more realistic to think that you're going to achieve something called passive income, right? If you've really got to build that thing up where it's only been around a short time, that's not going to be ideal. I suppose I would also want to know, like locally, are there more renters in this area or more owners? And if it is a laundromat going well, I can tell you now, there's going to be more renters. And then also, is the area become sometimes, less to do areas become affluent areas over time? So my question is the community scaling up, and is it becoming something a little more affluent over the last few years? And do you see that trend continuing? Why would that be important? Because affluent people do not use laundromats, right? And by the way, this might be a trend that the current owner sees. And they see a slight decline, and then they see that decline continuing as more and more owners come in, as opposed to renters, and a lot of whatever we're getting knocked down. You know what I mean? Like the area is adjusting in terms of its current landscape. I would want to know that. By the way, that's probably, now we might be getting a little bit here, but not really. These are things that I would want to know. I'd want to know if the equipment is owned or leased. That's also important. So lots of variables go into valuing this company, or any company for that matter. My instincts say that this business would be a reasonable buy. I don't know what the multiple is on a laundromat, but I can tell you that 5x is not going to be that's not going to be excessive by any stretch. Again, because it's a hands-off business and legitimately could be seen as something that could be managed by an individual, and passive income could be happening. What I would really like to do if I were to look at buying a laundromat like this is I would follow a franchising framework that I've talked about many times in the past. And that's that I'd want to own 3 laundromats in a small geographical area. Okay. So think 30-minute drive from one another, because that way you could have one manager who could manage all 3 locations of the same business, right? The same way if I was going to buy a Subway, I would never buy one Subway standalone. I would want to own 3 locations that are close by, 30 minutes in a perfect world. And then why? One lot of staff, one lot of inventory, a certain, you got lettuce and you got spinach. One location runs out of spinach. You can just get spinach from the other location, right? So 3 is a good framework. By the way, somebody calls in sick for Subway, and guess what? You can call somebody from another location to come in and, grab the shift, and they're only logically going to be roughly 30 minutes away, and that's going to be possible. So you buy one Subway franchise and only own that. Really what you're doing is you're buying a job. I would dare say the laundromat depend upon some dynamics here, and a laundromat is going to be a better business, by the way, a lot less moving parts than a Subway, to be clear. But if you own 3 laundromats in a small area where there was lots of renters, lots of apartment buildings, etc., I would dare say that would be a lot more exciting towards the end goal of achieving passive income, right? And yeah, look, I think I'm just going to say, 5x multiple again, and I'm not an expert on laundromats by any stretch of the imagination, but I do know that it's an attractive business to buy. For obvious reasons that your client is obviously thinking about, and that's passive income. But do think second business eats the first. So I'm going to say, I know they're making $1 million a year. Too much money makes you stupid is a very, much like you asked me earlier, right? Like, the frame of too much money makes you stupid. That can come into this. This could end very poorly. At the same time, could be amazing. So I don't know. That's what I would be thinking about. A great look in finish, though, as your client, what they're trying to do is they're trying to start a second business. Okay. I would encourage to follow Jeff Bezos's framework. And basically what he does is the second business that he starts, he becomes the number 1 client of, right? So Amazon Web Services being the flagship of that. Whereby they were spending an absolute fortune on that service. When they looked at their P&L, it's like, what are the most expensive things that we're spending money on? That's right at the top. So if we start that business, we'll immediately become a great client of this. So if his translation, so if his construction company is doing a ton of laundry, and look, the guy's netting $1 million a year, it doesn't sound like he's got, trucks and trucks and trucks and tons of staff. But if they were doing an enormous amount of laundry, and I looked at his P&L, and this was a big expense, this would be significantly more attractive, right? And in closing shoots, when you value a company, there's a lot that goes into it, far more than I've just said here. But I will tell you that there's 5 things you really want to think about: predictable, sustainable, growth opportunities, threats, and then scalability, right? So predictable, Lindy effect, it's been around for a decade. There's a really good chance that it's going to continue to be around. Sustainable, there's 10 machines. Is there going to be opportunity to get more machines, et cetera? Like, is that business going to be sustainable at the existing area? If it's becoming significantly more affluent than it was 5 years ago, 10 years ago, that would be trending in the wrong direction. I don't know that it's going to be as sustainable as to what numbers we're doing 5 years ago. Growth opportunities, not going to be a huge amount of growth opportunities, I don't think, in a laundromat. One of the things that I would automatically think of is doing like delivery, you know what I mean? Like going to homes, picking up their laundry, bringing it to the laundromat, doing it, and then dropping it off. So that would be like a higher level service that they could offer that they're probably not offering now. So that would be an example of a growth opportunity that, by the way, might be really exciting. And quite frankly, it would change the economics of the business. Threats, talked about a few of those, right? But, the area, moving more affluent, et cetera. And then scalability. Again, a business like this is scalable because, again, it is very, very hands-off, and you don't need to hire people like dentists and engineers and doctors. What you're hiring is like an 18-year-old, a 25-year-old, a 90-year-old that can, very easily manage something simple like this. So anyway, shoots, I'm going to say probably not something that I would be recommending, again, because the second business eats the first, but good question. And those are some of my thoughts.
You mentioned becoming your best client. Didn't I hear that your girl, Taylor Swift, big Swiftie, I know you are, didn't she buy like a trucking type company to move all of her sets and stages and everything else? Did you hear that as well?
I know, but if she did, brilliant. That just followed Jeff Bezos 101, right? Because you can imagine, look at her P&L, look at the business. This is a huge expense for her, getting the concerts, all the equipment to and from. That would be a great business for her to open up. And if she did, I got no doubt that she's doing it pretty well. She's a pretty smart gal, Rode Dog. She's a pretty smart gal.
Hey, listen, I got a bit of a different question here for you. We got from one of our coaches here, and he was saying, he hears a lot when he's going over P&L with a client, and he's talking about, because again, what do you always preach? The least sexy way, but the best thing you can ever do is help them cut costs, right? And he got some feedback, and just he really wanted to get your thoughts on it, and like, how do I handle this? Because the quote that he got back that he provided us with is, why would I want to cut out many of those costs? Because some of those are my personal perks. I want the company to pay for many of those items as a benefit to me as the owner, and then I don't have to claim as income or pay tax on the benefit. If I cut those costs and make more profit inside of the company will just have to pay the government more. Why would I want to do that? I thought that this is a brilliant question, and I wanted to throw it out to you because I think we can all learn a ton here. So what are your thoughts on that?
Okay. Beautiful. Okay. Better just set up the frame. So what you do, so you're you've got to separate personal from business just as a frame. But before I go there, what we're talking about, you sit down with your client, you go through their P&L. When you earn, let's say they got 20% net margins. Okay. Well, they earn $1, they keep how much? 20 cents. When they save $1, they keep how much? And the answer is 100 cents. So if you were $2,000 a month, 24 grand a year, $5,000 a month, 60 grand a year as a business coach, one of the first things that you want to do is you want to go in and cut costs and effectively become a free resource really, really quickly. And no doubt you already know, and if you don't know, you're going to find out quickly that business owners are famous for allowing expenses to creep up, right? So like the eighth wonder of the world is that expenses find a way to meet revenues, right? Okay, so as a frame, what you do is you sit down with your client, you go through their P&L, and you're going through their itemized. If you're not familiar with the P&L, it's just so straightforward, it's scary. But all you're doing is looking at their expenses, and you're looking at itemized expenses. Okay, and you ask them two questions. Does that get a client? Does that keep a client? Does that get a client? Does that keep a client? Does that get a client? Does it keep a client? And when it doesn't get a client or keep a client, there's a really, really good argument. Of course, there's nuances to this and exceptions to this, but there's a really good chance that you can cut that out. And then where is that money going to go? And the answer is 100 cents back into your client's pockets, right? So you do need to define business versus personal. So what I'm not talking about is, personal stuff that they used to have what they would describe as a great life, right? Because remember, building a business, the goal is not to build a big business, not to become insanely wealthy. The goal, in my opinion, should be for them to build a great life. They got to define a great life before they can get there, right? Because if you don't know where you're going, any road will get you there. But what is a great life for them, right? And status might drive them at a very, very high level. So therefore, building they $1, $5, $10 million company, there's a sexiness to it that you just, that they can't get from their own family life. And that's okay, right? Like every individual is driven by something different, right? So in fairness there, but we are talking about, we're not talking about the personal stuff. We're talking about the business stuff, right? So first thing I want to do with this client is I want to establish a starting line and a finishing line, right? I used to call little red arrow, you are here, and then the destination. I think a really good way of just encapsulating that, making it straightforward, a starting line and a finishing line, right? So does this guy or gal that owns the business want to build a $10 million company? Or are they looking to achieve a nice lifestyle, and do they have young kids that they want to watch grow up? Right? It's going to be somebody with no kids and somebody with 3 kids under the age of 7. I just think there's a really good chance that they're going to have a significantly different roadmap. The little red arrow, you are here, the starting line is going to be, very much different. And like I said, too much money makes you stupid, right? So I would factor that in there, folks, I tell you. Being frugal makes the entrepreneur more innovative, right? So what Jeff Bezos says is cost cutting, controlling costs is more about innovation than anything else. So I'm talking about the trucking company. We've talked about this in the past, right? What do they buy? They buy up souped up rims, for the trucks, and it costs them like 50 grand to kit up all of their Peterbilts with these really flashy rims, right? What the client really does the client really want cool rims, and does the client see the cool rims? Okay. And the answer is hard no. What they want you to do is they want you to be on time. They want you to do a great job. They want you to load and they want you to unload in an efficient, effective way. Right. So the butcher spends $5,000 on like a custom wood display case, right? Clients are coming in for meat. And yes, they want a clean environment, but spending $5,000 as opposed to $1,500 on a display case that, people aren't really too worried about and doesn't really move the needle. I think 95% of butcher shops could get away with the $1,500 case versus the $5,000 case and spend their money getting, quality meat, and then service that, keeps them coming back and impresses them. Right. Or maybe a better example of that is the high end fridge that is out the back that nobody sees. Right. And by the way, when you understand, like if you ever bought a lawnmower, if you bought a lawnmower 20 years ago, I can tell you that they never broke down. Right. You bought a lawnmower recently, I can tell you that you have more problems with that lawnmower than any other lawnmower. In fact, I can tell you this from hockey. Right. We used to make these hockey sticks that literally couldn't break. And then all of a sudden they worked out, hey, this is a bad idea, right? Because repeat sales equals profit. They want to be able to sell you lots of sticks. So they made them so that they broke significantly more often. And guess what the hockey stick companies did? They made significantly more money, right? So I say that to say that often this high-end fridge that you might be using out the back, the salesman kind of get you. And I'm going to say that the old fridge that was doing a good job and kept everything cold and the utility bills weren't going through the roof, and you would factor that in, I think that that's going to be a significantly better, you know what I mean? Like replacing that fridge, and let's just call it $5,000 for the sake of the argument, use the same number, and like $1,500 could otherwise get it done. I think that redirecting that money to the fridge is not necessarily the best idea. They should do it between, spend that money on marketing effectively, servicing their clients, providing bonuses for their staff, etc. Or again, it's the high end, so the sales guy comes in and sells them $5,000 on the new lighting or the new stereo system, right? Does that move the needle when people are coming into the butcher shop for a significantly small amount of time? I'm going to tell you that the butcher gets taken by the sales guy a lot. And that's an example. These are the places where we want to be intelligence, capital expenditures. It's CapEx, right? The new fridge, service the existing fridge on a regular basis as opposed to letting the thing die. This is where the money could be better spent. Or again, a bakery, right? They spend $3,000 on an espresso machine. Why? Because the owner loves coffee. It's out the back. It's not moving the needle in any way. You know what you should do is buy a good coffee machine that, makes good coffee for the staff and for the owner, and not break the bank and not spend, $2,000 of unnecessary funds on something that's not going to, move the needle. Or it's a landscaper spending money on designer uniforms. Imagine owning a landscaping company, right? You're up and down, grass and dirt all over the place. Look, these uniforms are going to get ruined anyways, right? Or it's the flashy truck wrap. And in some cases, that flashy truck wrap could, work really well. But at the end of the day, I think that you're going to find often what they're doing is they're spending significantly more money on that sort of stuff to look good, as opposed to be more functional and, get clients, keep clients. So I'm thinking candlestick maker. Like, what is the candlestick maker? What do they do? Like, it's packaging and custom engraved boxes for the distributor, and they're buying them from like 2 states away, right? They're paying for delivery. They're paying higher fees. Could they get that stuff locally for equal or even equal quality and significantly less? As translation, they need to shop around a little bit. And again, redirect those savings into a new staff member, and paying $4 for packaging as opposed to, again, depending upon what those numbers are. But let's assume $4 is on the low end. And rather than spending $8 on the package, I just think that, those differences, they can add up quick. And remember, when your client does their numbers at the end of the year, that money that they're saving, they're keeping 100 cents on every dollar. But they're not thinking like that. They're not thinking strategically. They're not thinking about getting clients, keeping clients, getting clients, keeping clients, getting clients, keeping clients as the foundation of their business, right? And by the way, the business owner is also missing. So how does all that work? Like, think feedback loop, right? I've said this, like, how do you take your coaching company from $100,000 to $500,000? And the answer is a feedback loop, right? So if you make $100,000 a year, live on 60 and then feed 40,000 back into the business, right? Or move to $200,000 and then live on $100,000. So up your lifestyle slightly, but not dramatically, and then feed the extra $100,000 into the business, marketing, staff, promotion, your events, product innovation. That's how you end up at $500,000 as a business coach. We'll go to most do. They go from $100,000 to $200,000 and they start flying first class and buy themselves an expensive boat or a new car, right? And by the way, I'm not in any way against people buying expensive boats, flying first class, or buying the new car. But my question is, are you feeding money back into the business to realize your goal, right? Remember, a goal is something you can see. A target is something you can hit. Set a target, aim for it. And I can tell you from experience that expensive boat will get you further away from the goal as opposed to closer. That said, if you define your life as having an expensive boat, a kick-ass, kick-butt boat, that you can take out, well then, okay, maybe that's something you should be doing. And the way you get there is you got to define what a great life is, right? But the bottom line, reinvesting, like a feedback loop, right? Hopefully that makes sense. But it all comes back, shoots. Is that the question is, what do they want? Okay, so that's the finishing line. And there's lots of nuances to this, to be fair, but that's the way I'd be thinking about it. Feedback loop as much as anything else, right? Look, also worth mentioning here, right? I think on the personal stuff, your client should be buying time rather than stuff, right? Like the lifestyle upgrade, think about buying time rather, you know what I mean, as a higher level frame, as a better use of funds, right? Like the average business owner can buy countless hours back for, like, I don't know, arbitrarily, I'm going to say like $2,000 a month, right? Because the average family spends so much time just doing menial tasks, like think driving, think getting groceries, think cooking, think cleaning, think the laundry, the household type stuff. The amount of time that you spend on just like eating, as an example, between buying the groceries, putting them away, driving to and from the grocery store, prepping for dinner, making dinner, eating dinner, and then cleaning up afterwards, would just blow your mind, right? Hire somebody to pick up the groceries or get them delivered, plan your meals, have somebody plan your meals, have somebody make your meals. The time saving could be absolutely unbelievable. Or hire somebody to do your laundries. Hire somebody to come in to clean your house twice a week. Hire somebody to organize the meals and do the meal prep. Right. And then use that time for what? Use that time. People say, I have no time to go to the gym. I've got no time to go hiking. I've got no time to go biking. Right. Well, guess what? Use that time to go to the gym, go hiking, go biking, hang out with the kids, hang out with your spouse, take her out of the date, build your business, buy a book on tax, buy a course and study tax on how to minimize your tax position in a legal and an intelligent way. Right. That's a lifestyle upgrade big time. So shoots, the Guerreros have a great life. So in no way, shape, or form are we talking about here these guys cutting out their personal, their personal expenses. But we are talking about is their business where they've got all kinds of expenses, the magazine subscription that they've had for forever, that does not bring in a client, does not keep a client in any way, shape, or form. They forgo that, and the 100%, $100, 100 cents on the dollar goes back into their bank account. So the bottom line is you're going through from a business standpoint and you're asking yourself two questions. For every line item in their business, does it get a client? Does it keep a client? Does it get a client? Does it keep a client? Does it get a client? Does it keep a client? And then also factoring in feedback loop to make sure that they are taking funds and they're bringing them back into their business. And you will be blown away at the incredible savings they're not currently realizing that you could find really, really quickly. So anyway, shoots, that's my answer, but that's the way I handle that.
Okay. It's time to slow it down, Big Shoots. It's time. We've gone over a lot of financials, P&Ls, numbers, frameworks, buyback loops. It's time to bring it back together to your moment of Zen.
Zen.
What? Let's go, big fella. What you must have some sort of Zen state. You're out on the water this morning. Let's go. Let's not.
More from my fast sheets, more from my fast. But anyways, here. Okay, so I feel like my intuition, it would just felt stronger when I talk about the mental clarity, my fast. And it's not like, some people's intuition is stronger than others. And then not to mention the same individual can have stronger intuition in different dynamics, like i.e. if you're really looking after your health. In my example, I did a fast and I had a lot of mental clarity. I definitely felt like my intuition kind of took a step up, but it got me thinking, like, what happens when you lie to yourself every single day and consistently, right? Or no, sorry, no. What happens if I lie to you every single day and I do it consistently, right? You're not going to trust me, right? Well, the same thing happens when you lie to yourself. What do? You lose trust in yourself. You lose your intuition. And rule number one of any addiction therapy, you're addicted to alcohol, addicted to drugs, addicted to gambling, etc., is always tell the truth. It's literally like the starting line of any forward progress in an addiction environment when they're looking to get you over an addiction, right? So it's like people who are always late are also very sensitive, right? It's like they got to be somewhere at 8:00. It's 10 minutes to 8, and they feel like they have all kinds of time, right? And no doubt, as I say that, you know that individual. Well, a baby has no understanding of time, right? So like 5 minutes is literally like an eternity. Like, why is this? Well, people who grew up in a high stress environment when they were young, right? They don't develop their sense of time. Okay. And those people, by the way, there's a high probability that they've got ADHD. So ADHD, I guess, is less genetic than it is a response of a highly stressed environment when you are developing as a child, right? There's some science behind that. No doubt there's some nuances to it, but seems fairly reliable from what I can see, right? And the translation, if you want to build a big business that grows organically, you want to create good energy. Just like, you want to create a high stress environment. Um, if you don't want to create a high stress environment, if you want your kids to develop well, right? It's an energy more than it is about, them having a clean room, doing the dishes, having a clean kitchen, and doing their chores, right? So like a question that would lead me to is, um, how can you change the trajectory of your household and the energy? And it's like, here's a question. How do you want your home to feel when you come home? How do you want your home to feel when you walk in the front door? It's not about a job. It's not about a business. It's not about revenues. It's not about profits. It's not about the size of the house and how many rooms and how many bathrooms. Certainly not about how much money you have. Um, it's how do you want your home to feel, right? So it reminds me of the Buddhist monk, right? Saying that your goal is not happiness, or his goal is not happiness. His goal is peace. And you might be able to take a little bit of magic from that, right? Like create a peaceful home, create a peaceful environment, create a peaceful office, create, a peaceful, calm conversation between you and your kids, between you and your staff, between you and your friends, between you and your spouse, right? Like when you have a $10,000 rug and the kid spills Kool-Aid on it, that lands differently than when your kids spill something on an area rug that you just don't give a rat's backside about, right? Or you got a $300,000 Rolls Royce, right? And then you've got young kids, the kids spill something on the seat. It could be rather dramatic, no doubt, right? Well, if you've got young kids and your goal is to have a happy family environment and really good energy that feels amazing, is it better to own a minivan so that the kids don't end up on edge all the time, right? Like they're kids, right? But again, it comes back to that question of like, how do you want your home to feel? What's the energy that you want to have amongst your family, right? Like maybe impress your family with an awesome energy as opposed to impress your neighbors with your new fancy car, right? Something to think about. But I think it comes back to that intuition and strengthening it and just being really, really honest with yourself. And if you don't know where you're going, any road will get you there. Being really, really clear on that as the goal, I think is huge. Which brings me to, this might sound stupid, Shoots, but like when you fall in love, right? How do you feel? You feel joy. You feel confident. You feel elevated. You work harder. You show up at a higher level for yourself and you show up at a higher level for others, right? Well, what you're attracted to isn't the other person, but it's how they make you feel, right? That's what you're really and most attracted to. So it's the same when you get a raise, you get the new job, you start the business. In our world, you get the new coaching client. Careful. What I'm trying to say is maybe careful to give that power away, right? It's always within you. It's there now. It's a matter of you elevating it. And the way you're going to get there is through, a calm mind and, solid intuition and just a frame of positive, calm, progressive energy, right? It's you that changes when you get the new girlfriend or the new love. It's not the outside, or again, in our world, when you get the client, right? So when you sign a client, the best thing to do, so when a lot of people, I've said this lots, right? You sign a client, and what an average coach does is go to sleep. And what a great client or a great coach does is they put the gas pedal on to generate more leads, to reach out to more people, to make more calls, to more, and invite people to their seminar, book their seminar, walk down to the chamber and, get that next presentation going, right? Like the world works in streaks and patterns, right? So like my dad, he's a professional gambler growing up, right? So if you're playing blackjack and you win, anybody who understands blackjack at a high level will tell you that you want to double your next bet or certainly increase your next bet. Why? There's a really good chance that you're going to win again, right? You win in streaks. And by the way, you also lose in streaks. So careful with that one, right? But anyway, so when you get a client, what do you want to do? You want to hit that gas pedal. Whereas most people, I don't want to say most coaches, but a lot of coaches, they get the client and then they hit cruise control. And what I want you to be thinking about is getting that client and pressing the gas pedal, right? But important not to give away that control, because that same buzz, that same dopamine hit that you get when you sign the client, you've already got it within you. It's just a matter of, pulling away some of those distractions. And what do they say about, the gold Buddha. It was just a matter of chipping away everything that was not the gold Buddha. So something along those lines, shoot. So remember, like focus, name my company focus.com for a reason. Focus is not about focus. Focus is more about eliminating distractions than it is actually getting focused, right? So clear head, clear mind, positive energy, calm environment, I think really, really moves. I think anyway, so yeah, shoots, that's my answer, and that's my answer. That's what I'm going with. How'd I do?
All right, buddy. I like it. I like it. I like how we turn this around back to Zen state. Listen, let's button this up, as they say, and let's go. Give the listeners the one thing. Give them one thing that you feel they can extract from this episode, because there's a lot of ways that you can go. But what's the one thing for you?
For one, I want to encourage everybody, because I know there's some people listening, and I mentioned fast, and they're like, yeah, no, that's just not something I could pull off. I promise you could. And by the way, if you ask me how I do it, especially early on when I was challenged to, do a fast, I write down a list of reasons why I want to accomplish the fast, daughter's wedding, my own health, avoid things like that big nasty C word, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So make a list of reasons why, and then you feel like taking a big fat bite of that chocolate bar. And rather than take a bite of the chocolate bar, all you do is you revisit those list of reasons why, and I think you'd be well served. And I think also, Shades, what could be good for everybody, like the framework you asked me about. Okay, so you've got a client thinking about building, thinking about buying another business. I talk about, focus is more about eliminating distractions than it is actually getting focused. You know how much time your client spends, searching stocks, searching real estate, all kinds of stuff in classified ads, let's just call them online. You'd be blown away. Take that stuff away from them. I'm going to dare say like that. What was it? A landscaping or a construction company? The guy's thinking about buying a laundromat. I'm going to say that deal is not going to end up going through. And it is going to be a wild distraction that if he took that time, that money, that energy, that resources, that mental bandwidth, that clarity, that focus, and just spent the time on building their existing business where they were netting $1 million a year, which translation, they're doing real good. Concentrate on taking that $1 million net and turning that into 1.5 net would be significantly better use of time. Than looking at another business, which I get the attractiveness, I get the sexiness of it. I'm just going to say that that's a bad idea. Stay focused. And that goes for you, me, our clients, etc. Gotta stay on point, gotta stay focused. So that's my answer, Shoots. That's what I got.
I got one for you. Tell me what you think of this one. If your goals excite you, but your daily activities bore you, you're doing it right.
Oh, there we go. Boom. Yeah. Okay. I'll get behind that.
Right?
Say it again.
If your goals excite you, but your daily activities bore you, you're doing it right.
Okay. Yeah, I'll get right behind that one. That's good. Shoots. Well done, bud.
I saw that and I was like, yeah, isn't that the whole thing? Like, it's just, you're just in your rhythm. You're just no matter what, you love it. You hate the work that you do every day. It just becomes repetitive. Hey, you're winning likely, because you're getting it done and you're consistent in your actions.
Said another way, Shoots, legitimate success is insanely boring. That's it.
Boom.
If you need a little bit of excitement, go skydiving, go bungee jumping, go karting, go rent a supercar for the weekend. Get your buzz that way. Getting your buzz out of your business on a consistent basis is it rhymes with new and next. New and those two words cost me a lot of money. Careful with new and next. Same thing over and over and over again. Significantly better game plan.
Love it. All right, everybody. Well, thanks for tuning in to another episode of Business Coaching Secrets. And again, if you're not on the inside and getting access to the pre-show, you aren't getting Karl's daily emails, or you just want to have more information on how to build, grow, scale your coaching company, visit focus.com and subscribe today. Also, if you enjoyed this podcast, please like and subscribe, and also share with a fellow coach, as, hey, we're trying to make our impact on the coaching community as well. And while you're at it, feel free to leave us a review. that is it for another episode. We will see you in the next one next week. And remember, folks, progress equals happiness. Take care, everybody.
Karl Bryan built Profit Acceleration Software 2.0. So as a business coach, you'll never again have to worry about working with business owners that can't afford your high-end coaching fees. Check us out at focused.com.